Perfect. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's session. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that the land we identify as RTO9 is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Huron-Wendat peoples. RTO9 will honor and respect the land, the people, and the treaties. We are extremely thankful for the original tour guides of these lands and all that they have shared. All those that reside, work, and play on these lands are treaty people, and we must honor the treaties in a mutually beneficial and equitable manner. With 1 in 5 Indigenous people in Canada living in Ontario, we believe working together in a mutually beneficial manner will help all Ontarians prosper through the joint development of the tourism industry. As an ally to Indigenous people and a partner of Indigenous Tourism Ontario, RTO9 will commit to improving the socioeconomic conditions of Indigenous people through tourism by creating space for Indigenous people to tell their stories on their terms. Now, just a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. First, if you didn't hear, this workshop is being recorded and it will be available for viewing after today's session on the RTO9 website, rto9.ca. There will also be opportunities for questions. So if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to pop them in the Q&A box or in the chat window. If you use the chat box, it's done anonymously. It's located at the bottom of your screen. Or if you put it on the chat window, your name will be associated with it, but it'll pop up right away and be part of the discussion. You will receive an email following today's session. It's just going to have a quick 2-minute survey link. If you're able to spare some time, review the workshop, let us know how it was. It helps both us make sure we're giving you content that you like, and helps Karine, build out her presentations and webinars for future use. Now, without further ado, I am going to pass it over to Karine from Mellow Brew Marketing to get started on today's session.
Thank you, Meg. Yes, the feedback is always super helpful. In the earlier sessions that we've done, there was some feedback that came in about some of the content being, very introductory and very at a basic level. And it really is where we want to start in our discussion with all of the topics that I've been presenting on in this series. And it's just because there's a lot of basics that need an understanding, and we often just need a lot of this basic information to get started, and so to not overwhelm. So today we are having another basic conversation about analytics and metrics, what that looks like. But I think that I'm giving you some tools to walk away with so that you can look at your content and really identify how you can refine different pieces to help your strategy. So I'm just going to share my slide deck here and open my chat box. So I've mentioned this in every presentation. Please feel free to drop into the chat. Tell me that you're there, that you are chatting along with me, that you are resonating with things or asking questions. It's very difficult for me to do these presentations without any other humans around me. I feel like I'm just speaking to my screen. So please engage with me in the chat. I very much appreciate it. It's super helpful. Thank you, Maria, letting me know that you are here. So today, again, we are having a conversation about analytics and what that looks like for your business or your organization, and the key things that you can look at to understand how your content is performing, because I know you're putting a lot of time and effort into creating this content, and it's very it can be a struggle when you're not sure if it's hitting the mark, or if you're not understanding why the content that you put so much time and effort in is not going the distance, because you are putting a lot of effort in there. So hello to Mary from Spencerville Mill. Thank you for being here. Michelle, thank you so much. Hi, Trish. I appreciate all of you being here. So I guess my first question, and I hope that you'll engage with me here, is how confidently do you review your social media metrics? So when you're looking at all of the content and all of the pieces that you're putting out there on your social channels, how confidently are you reviewing your analytics? So I'd love for you to make a comment, share an emoji, just like tell me where you're at with all of this. 0% confident. Excellent. Rarely, not often. That is pretty standard. Working at Mellow Brew Marketing, we work with business owners every day, doing all of their marketing, particularly in web. and design and strategy. And when it comes to the web part, we, of course, use the data that we see to be able to identify what kind of website our clients need, where we need to pay more attention, what really requires more effort. And for the most part, our clients are like, I've never looked at it. Don't really care to look at. Can you just tell me what's happening? But you're here today because you do want to know and you do want to understand it, which is really great. I'm seeing a lot of funny emojis thinking like, what is that? Which is funny because it leads me to my next question, which was, do you even review them at all? So it's not uncommon to not review, but we can't adjust and we can't change what we don't measure. I'm sure you've heard that before. If we don't know what's actually happening, how can we make changes? So if you're just pelting out content month over month and you're saying my page is not growing, I'm not getting more people to my to engage in my content, we're doing everything that we can, we're putting out, a post every day, but nothing is happening. The data will tell you what is happening. It'll tell you what's going on, what you should be doing more of, what you should be doing less of. There's a lot here to educate you. And that's my goal today, is to give you a basic understanding so that you can know what you're looking at and feel confident making decisions along the way. So I'm just looking through the comments here, still regularly check the number of views in the comments, but not much more than that. That's fair. You look at it quarterly. Not terrible. It's good to have a schedule of when you're reviewing things, but if you're waiting, 3 months before you make an adjustment to your social strategy, is it too long? I don't know. We're going to talk about those types of things today. I don't take time to understand them. That's okay. That's what we're doing today. All right. So for the most part, obviously you're here because you want to know more about it. And that's what we're going to do. So before we jump in, my name is Karine Fartanes. So I'm a business and brand strategist, and my agency is Mellow Brew Marketing. I'm also the founder and author of a book and a planner, The Work Vacay, which just allows business owners to take a break to work on their business. So my work has been over the last 15 years working with business owners and organizations to really understand what it is that what we need to be doing, and really figuring out strategies and plans to take action in our work and in our businesses. So all of my knowledge I'm sharing with you today comes from years of experience working with people just like you. So today how we're going to fill your cup is we're going to understand the basics of social media analytics and metric concepts. So we're just going to talk about the basic. I just want you to understand keywords and key terminology so that you know what you're looking for. We're going to learn how to track and engage track engagement and audience behavior. So understanding what it looks like when people do certain things, how they engage with your posts. What do these things mean? And then I'm going to give you something to take action on so that you can actually go out there and look at some of your previous content, assess where you're at, and then make a plan to adjust and pivot from there. Because I think it's important that once we acknowledge the content that we've put out there, the metrics, the analytics, then we have to do something with it. We have to have a plan. We have to take action on making adjustments. And maybe today you're going to learn, when you dig in, if you haven't looked at your analytics in a long time, or if you haven't looked at the data, you might learn, wow, I'm actually doing much better than I thought. And maybe you can keep going the way you are. But that's what we're going to discover together. So we're going to jump right in with what are analytics and metrics. So kind of the same thing, a little bit different, one more a little bit granular than the other. So when we think about analytics, it really is just the overall data that's collected and tracked to improve your performance. So we are looking at when I think of overall analytics, it's probably the dashboard of everything that you're looking, what often is called insights on a lot of the tools that we're looking at. So it's an overall view of the data that is pulled for every post that you make, every interaction that is done on the content that you share. Whereas the metrics become a little bit more specific. So things like the reach, and the clicks. So we're looking at the overall analytics, but the metrics is probably what you actually talk about most days. And it's not uncommon to, things like reach, likes and clicks. It is probably what you or your boss or your team is asking of you. Like, where are we at? How many likes did we get on that? That's probably the most common one. We want to get that boost of serotonin and showing that, yes, someone has liked and engaged with this. But what we are going to learn is that that's not always the telling factor that your content is doing well. And an example of that would be that I work with a lot of different companies and businesses that don't have the type of content that people will really engage with. And the reason for that is not publicly engage with, I should say. So, for example, a finance company, financial advisors who are sharing tips and tricks on, how to better invest and how to better place your money, plan for retirement. People aren't running to make comments on content like that, saying like, "Oh, this is how much money I have. Here's how I'm placing my money." That conversation isn't happening. So, we're not going to get as many comments or necessarily likes on these types of posts. But if we see people clicking on the links we share, going to the website, signing up for the mailing list, we can see that people are engaging with this in the way that we need them to, and it looks different. So my message to you today is that if all you're looking at is your likes and you're saying, well, this post only got 4 likes, okay, but there's a lot of other data in there that can help you realize, oh, wow, people haven't necessarily engaged with, the traditional like of this post, but there's a lot of other stuff that's been going really, really well with this content. And that I hope is a revelation for you today so that you can at least understand that there are a lot of extra pieces that help you understand how you're doing. So, analytics will help you make data driven decisions so that you are not just throwing out whatever content. So, I'd love to see in the comments how many of you we call it the post and pray. You post something and hope that it does well. You don't necessarily strategize a whole lot. You have a little bit of a plan, but it's not super concrete, and you just kind of share content when the mood strikes you or when you feel like you have something to share. I'd love to see if that's a pretty fair assessment or 100% right away the first comment. That's what I do. That's not uncommon. That happens a lot. Social has become it's such a big role within an organization and within a business. And for many years, it was just this added thing that we all had to do, right? Especially business owners or even teams that don't have a dedicated staff member to social content and engagement. It's just one of those other things that you have to do. And so when you have a primary job or a primary business that you're taking care of and you're wearing all these hats and you have all these other responsibilities, often this stuff gets kind of watered down, and creating content and sharing becomes a nice to have. You share when it's available, when you have time for it. So I'm seeing, a lot of other comments, the same thing. No extra time to overthink. So what the data can help us do is really make a plan so that you can do that. Now, I am with you 100%. I understand that it is difficult to make a plan when you have all these hats. But the reality is that if you're not taking time to at least identify what's working so that you can do more of it, or identify what's not working so that you can pull away from it, all the efforts that you're making in between might not be actually generating the kind of interest or the flow to your website, whatever it is that you're trying to have happen, the actions you want people to do with the content that you're doing. Maybe it's not happening because you're not taking the time. So then that becomes a waste of time. And I don't want that for you. I want you to be able to, even if I would rather you share 4 insightful, helpful, useful pieces of content every month than throw out a dozen and it's just like all this stuff that just more than anything takes up your time but actually doesn't drive results. So let's create great content versus just throwing stuff out there. And the data that we find in all of our analytics and our metrics, that helps us identify what we're looking for. So I'm seeing a comment. I'm trying to watch and spot the patterns. Exactly. That's exactly what we need to do with analytics and all this data. And the reality is that it really is like a science experiment. You don't know. You don't know until you try and until you measure it and you look at it. So it is important to take a stop and just say, okay, let's look at it. And we'll do a few examples of that. I'm just going to pull up some dashboards just to kind of give you an overall idea at the end of this what you might be looking for. And it might surprise you to see things where you're thinking, wow, I wouldn't have thought of it this way. So we'll go through that and hopefully enlighten you so that you feel better. So here are some key terms that I would like you to know. So these are some really basic things that we're going to look. And at the end of this, I'm going to share a little bit or throughout this, I'm going to share with you a formula that might also help you kind of feel more confident in where you're headed. So the engagement rate. First of all, do any of these terms, as I'm like sharing them through, do they resonate? I'm talking about all these things. Engagement measures how actively your audience interacts with your content. Do you look at your engagement rate? Did you know what an engagement rate was? Is it these things that you're looking at? Yes. Seeing comments, yes. So that's possible or positive, sorry. The reach, the total number of unique people who see your content. So there is a difference between reach and impressions. So you might see both in your data. So the impressions are the total number of times your content is looked at. So if you post something and we'll go back to the reach, there's a reach of 10 people. 10 people, that's really low. That's a silly number. Let's go 100. 100 people were reached with your post, but the impressions were 178. That is a really great impression read because that means 78 people came back to look at your content, or 100 people saw it, but 78 more views came back. So somebody came back to look at it again, or it passed in their feed somehow again. And that's super helpful to know because the impression does go a little bit further than that reach. But if we're seeing a higher impression, should we be seeing more engagement somehow? Are people clicking on things? And so there's a lot of stuff to review in terms of impressions and reach. But again, we'll go through some details a little bit further there. The number of followers or the number of people that are on your page or that follow you on any content or platform. For a long time on Facebook, it would have been likes on your page. I'm sure you'll see that there's data on both on your pages, especially if you've had it for a long time. There are likes and there are followers. Both really is kind of a number that kind of rolls in together. I see a comment. Will you show us where to find these results? This is the most challenging part. I do have some screenshots inside of the Facebook dashboard because that is the most common of the tools. And I'm going to give you some examples of what you're looking for. And hopefully when you go into whatever tool you're looking at, it will make it easier. But again, maybe I should ask that question here. What tools do you mostly have challenges with when you're looking for your analytics and your insights? When you're looking for this, Meta. Yeah, Meta is a mess, but you don't want to hear that from me. Meta is always changing, unfortunately, and they're always growing and they don't make it easy to access. They also don't make it super easy to access your data on your mobile device if you don't have the mobile app. So just something like that would make a huge difference. If you don't have the Meta Business Suite app on your phone, add it. If that's where you're looking for your data, add it so you can see things more clearly. But sitting in front of a desktop, it's a lot clearer. There's a lot more to see. They show you a lot more than you would on this little device that they have to kind of condense the view because you're limited to what you can see. So, yes, I'm going to show you some screenshots and hopefully if there are any questions, we can go through that together. So the click-through rate, so that's the percentage of users who clicked on a specific link of your content compared to the total number of people who saw it. So how many people are clicking to know more, to look at the links that you have, or to engage in it somehow. And then conversions, a specific desired action that you want your users to take. So how many people did you convert? And conversions can look different from one place to another. Maybe converting someone is getting them to go to your website and purchase your product, where on the other hand, it could be converting them to go to your site and sign up for your email list. So just following this is like a deeper metric that maybe something you could set up on, for example, Google Analytics. You could go in there and like set that up as a goal to see the conversions that are happening on your site. Again, there's so many pieces that you can track and it can tell you so much. But today I really want you to focus on the basics, and I'm going to outline what that really is for you today. So there's different types of metrics. There's different types of things that you can be looking at. So let's talk about the engagement metrics. So again, how many of you have been asked by someone you know or someone you work for, how many likes did that get? Did they get comments? Did anybody share it? How often do you see that happening? Or get that message from someone? Or even yourself, you go back to your comment, or your post. How many likes did I get on this? Often. That's exactly it. These are usually the engagement metrics. These are the first things that we're asking how those are going. And the reason for that uh, is because here is where we actually get the most of the audience interaction. This is telling us that people like us. So really it is they're kind of vanity metrics. They're the ones that tell us, oh, people like us, things are going well. But there are a lot of other things that we can be looking at. However, these are primarily the ones that engage more activity, help the tools propel us a little bit forward. So if you put something out and there's a lot of engagement, a lot of likes, comments people start sharing it, automatically the tool that you're in says, oh, there's interest here. And it kind of throws it to more people. And that's kind of the ripple effect. Ultimately, when we talk about getting more likes, getting more comments and shares and all these things, it really is about creating good content and intentional content. And that's why earlier I said, I would rather see you post, a solid handful of pieces of content that are valuable, that you've thought through, that can be helpful to your audience versus a dozen pieces that are not, because they're not going to get the same reach as good intentional content. So again, just some enlightenment there that it is important to still take the time to think of these things because it does make a difference. And I know it's not the answer that you want to hear. It's not the answer that I like. There was a time when I started using social tools a decade ago where it was very easy to post something, to get the reach, to get the engagement. You have a new service or a product, boom, in hours, people knew about it. You were getting inquiries. It was so easy. It's not like that anymore. It's a pay to play game. There are a lot of other people creating content. Now that we're in video, it's very overwhelming. But that doesn't mean that you have to do everything and you have to be perfect at all of it. It just means you have to do one thing, one step at a time, and just do it thoughtfully. So, okay, engagement metrics, super important. And one of the biggest ways I think that we can find out what our engagement looks like and how well we're doing is with this engagement formula. So if you take the number of likes, the number of comments, and the number of shares that you have, and then you divide that by the total number of followers, and of course multiply, that's where you're going to get that rate of how many people are engaging with your content. So the engagement formula just really helps you understand, how well you're doing with things. And the engagement that you're seeing from, everyone that's coming. Sorry, I'm kind of blocked here. My screen has shut down on me. I don't know what's going on. Give me a quick second. Can you hear me all? I'd love to know in the comments if you can hear everything okay.
We can hear you and we can see your screen still.
Okay, because it's not moving for me. Just give me a quick second. Everyone seems to be okay there. Okay. I love when technology works in our favor. I think it's the snow happening outside. Thanks for your patience there. So engagement metrics, super important and likely the ones that we look at first. Sorry, I'm going to scoot over to audience behavior metrics. So the reach versus the impressions. So we talked about that a little bit earlier, the unique views versus the total views of people that have seen our content. Audience behavior metrics also include, the demographics. So the age, the gender, the location. You can find all of this information listed in your analytics and the behavior patterns also. So times of the activity and the device that they used. All of this is available across most channels, not just in social, but also in your email marketing, in your websites. These are all details that you can see so you can have an understanding of who is engaging with you. So for example, if you and I was going to share a web statistic, or a web metric. But if you see most of your people are engaging on your website on a mobile device, then you will want to make sure that your mobile website is up to par and it's working well because most of your people are coming through that way. So it'll be the same thing with your social. You're going to look at everything. You're going to say, okay, well, people use these particular devices or they engage at this time. That's probably the biggest one. If people are engaging with content on your page in the evenings, don't post at 9 a.m. It's not ideal to post at 9 a.m. Because you're not going to get the same kind of engagement as you would if you would post it at the time where it tells you that people are engaging you with. So again, this is all inside the metrics, the analytics dashboards. Then we have content performance metrics. So how your content is actually performing on there and what we're looking for. So the CTR tracks how many people clicked on your links. So when you're sharing a blog post or a new product link where you want people to go shop at, or you want people to sign up for your mailing list, how many people actually clicked on your links? And my example earlier with my client who talks about financial topics and might not necessarily get people discussing their finances on their site, that doesn't mean that they're not going to click and go visit what they have to offer and ultimately possibly sign up with them. So that might also resonate with you. Conversions, so that's tracking the desired action, so the purchase and the signups, and then highlights to identify top performing content to replicate the success. So what type of content are you putting out there you're seeing the most engagement? So the most simple example of that would be that for the most part, if you post, and you might be able to resonate with this and you can write in the comments if you do, when you post photos of yourself, your team, your staff, your customers, people, real life people, you probably typically get a lot more engagement, and it's the kind of content that performs relatively well. All the time. First comment, yes, this is all the time. Well, people love to see people that they know and that they relate to. That content is super helpful, and it's important to pepper it in. But the metrics will also tell us, was it just kind of like a popularity post? Do people, and I say popularity in the sense that, did the person's family see the post and then they liked it and they shared it? You can take those likes and those wins because it's super helpful. If people are engaging with it, then that means it gets into the eyes of other people. So I think it's absolutely important to do that. But that's not necessarily the type of content that's converting people. That's bringing awareness to you existing and maybe your page and your product or your service. So again, yeah, you can post a photo every day of your team and your staff or whomever else, and you'll get great content performance on that. But we need to make sure that we're also aligning that with the type of content that's helping us actually convert and get people to either become customers or, people who celebrate our brand and let the world know about us. So that's also very, very important. There's a question in the Q&A. Let me just see. Sorry, just a quick second. It's a little bit further. Want to know how this would benefit with people with disability. So I'm not sure what specifically you're referring to. There was an answer by Meg. Right. Okay. So Meg, you were able to put the captions on. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss that Q&A. Thanks for handling that. So all of these things, the different categories of metrics, they're all super important. Some may be more important to you than others. And I think that's an important part of analytics as well. While there's all kinds of data and you can dissect it in a million ways, there are going to be key things that are important to you, your business, and your organization, and you need to decide on what that is. So how do we take that information, refine it for our strategy? How do we make sure that we're using this data in a way that works for us? So some things that we can look at. So actionable insights to refine would be to post more at peak times. Example we talked about earlier. If you're getting a lot of engagement in the evening, that's when you're going to want to post. Focus on high performing content types. So things that do really well. We just talked about how if your, people in your feed are helping you get engagement, okay, that's good. We're going to keep putting that content in there, and it's important to keep that going. And we can mesh that in with other purposeful content. Great example of this is one of our clients at Alpine Design in downtown Cornwall. They sell Benjamin Moore paints, and we recently designed a mural for them that highlights their paints and the colors, and it's just very fun. And now every time somebody comes to their shop, they take a photo of them leaving with their paint, and there's like a fun slogan on the wall, and people get really into it, and it's a lot of fun. So this content is getting engagement. Is that getting people to click on their website? Are we following that type of data link? No, but it's getting engagement because people are resharing their photo. Their families are seeing it. They're seeing an increase of people liking their page because people didn't realize that they existed. So all of these efforts start to roll into everything. So that's super important and helpful to know. And another little kind of takeaway here is that a lot of your efforts online, while they can be absolutely measured, we can't always tie a specific action to an influx or a change in our data. So sometimes it's not very clear. Is it that or is it something else? But we can conclude based on, the time and energy we're putting into something that it's working. Example, the mural and the photos of the clients. We're seeing an increase in people that go and like the page, and that happens, and the engagement happens there because there's this effort being made. So we can conclude that that's really helping, and we're not going to stop. So sometimes the data isn't exactly right in front of you. Sometimes it's just putting the pieces together, and that's why it's important to look at everything kind of holistically. So where can you find the best details of your analytics? So there are the native platforms for analytics. So in Facebook, it would be Meta. Also, Instagram now has kind of moved into there. They have their own dashboards. So you can log in, you're able to look at everything from there. And it's usually where, if you're not using a tool, if you don't have a robust tool where you're managing your socials, that's where you're going to go. If you're using a scheduling tool, so here I've exampled, these are free tools, Later and Buffer. You could also be paying for something like Sprout Social or Hootsuite. There's a lot of data in there as well. These particular tools also will give you, really robust reporting, and you can customize your reporting so that you can pull specific information every month and really understand how things are going. But a very simple form also would just be to have a Google Sheet for yourself. So if you wanted to track, it's a little bit more manual. I mean, you could probably set Zaps and do it a little bit more automatically. But if you wanted to, if you're really just looking to look at the basics of your analytics, you might want to just have a sheet where you mark, month over month, here's what my performance engagement rate, here's the formula, here's how it works for me, and you kind of grow it from there. So that can be super helpful. I'm seeing some question, how much is it? Sorry, I'm not sure what the question is about. How much is it? Is it about the tool? If they're like, the tools all have various fees. So and they're not inexpensive. They're usually built so that you can have multiple channels on them. You can run anywhere from like $59 a month to $250 a month. It really just depends on the type of tools that you want to use and what's helpful for you and your business. So there's a lot to explore there. And here are just some examples that I was talking about earlier. I'm allowing for a lot of conversation today around questions because I'm assuming there's going to be some. So let's just go through some examples. So here's a post, and here's probably how you're measuring most of your data. You're looking at this and you're like, oh, great, there were 40 likes, 10 comments, 12 shares. Yay me, we did well. How many of you, this is the extent of like you looking at your data and your analytics? Show of hands if that's what you do. You go to your post and you're like, wow, it performed relatively well. Yay me. Right away, the comments are, yes, this is perfect. This is all I look at. So we can actually dive in quite a bit deeper. We got Maria saying, I go deeper, which is great. And we're going to show you a little bit what that might look like. So here's an example of the dashboard inside of Meta. There's a lot of information here, and there's a lot of detail that you can work through. But if you go to just the general overview page, right away, you can see there's a lot of information here. And the reason I want to show this highlight specifically, where we're showing that actually this reach is down 1.2. This is a huge page. It's, your data might not look quite like this. That's okay. But if there's a drop here, 2.5% less of a reach, and the content interaction is down by 17.4%. And we're like, oh, immediately when we see red, we're like, it's terrible. It's just not going well. And there's a couple of ways to look at that. There's so much information that is collected through here. So if you were coming back from a hiatus, like a holiday, like we just had a couple of weeks, you took a break from social media and you come back and you start sharing content again. And from, 2 weeks ago to the new 2 weeks that you just did content, there was a drop. Well, you weren't engaging people over the last 2 weeks. So you need to be aware of how much content you were putting out. If you were putting out less content, you were probably getting less reach. If you were putting less posts out, the interactions are going to be recognized here in the data. In the same breath, 1.2 million people still reached the content here. And there were still 2.8 thousand content interactions. So there was still a lot happening here with the content that was shared. Over 16,000 people clicked on a link. It's not all garbage. And so when you look at this and you see all this red and you're like, oh, it's not doing great, ask yourself about the variables. What did it look like when you were posting last month versus this month? These metrics are like, you can see the dates up here. April 17th to May 14th was basically a month's worth of content. So when you start playing with the dates, you start to see, oh, it's really not as bad. You can adjust and you can kind of pivot around that. Again, there's all kinds of pieces on the side. I wish I could have my little cursor here, but the red is right next to the 1.2 million. It says down 2.5%. The 2.8 content interaction, it says it's down 17.4%. So those ones were showing a lower engagement, or maybe the reach breakdown on the far right bottom corner. Like the reach really was broken down and it was substantially, it was less. I shouldn't say substantially. It was a relatively small drop. But again, understanding that this doesn't mean that it's all falling apart. It just means that there are variables and you can ask yourself, okay, why is it like this? Maybe it did go down because your content's just not as good. That's a possibility too. But if there were changes in how you were sharing, it's important to look at that here. On the left-hand side too, you'll see there's all the different pieces to this is the Meta backend. So there's a lot going on here. But if you go to your content overview view and your content here, you can actually break it down post by post. So you can go and see how each post perform in more detail. And I'll show you an example of that in a moment. Well, here's an example. Here's a post of, oh no, this is not quite there yet. Sorry. This is the dashboard where we're seeing all the green. So immediately you're thinking, okay, green, it's got to be good. Again, yes, it is positive. If we are growing, this is what we would like to see. But I think the biggest takeaway from this dashboard is that it's an overview. And the important part is to click with your dates here and really assess based on what it is you're doing. Because right now, this is showing August to October. So that's a substantial chunk of time. If we broke that down into a month by month, would we still be getting the same results? Was the last quarter as busy? You can kind of just play around with that and really identify how the interactions are actually going. So my point with all of this is when you land on the overview, tailor this screen to the information you really want to see. Don't just land on it and be like, oh, well, it's showing me this, it's not going well. No, break it down. And my thought is that for the most part, you're not all sharing content, multiple pieces of content a day. You're probably sharing a few a week, and maybe you can confirm that in the comments. It's a few posts per week. Your data isn't going to be quite as high as this. So you're probably going to want to look more at the content bits than the overall content, because the overall content might not be a proper representation of what you're looking for when you break it down, because you might take longer breaks in between things. And again, there's some skewed information there. This is not a perfect answer. And that's the reason. That's the science behind really understanding what the dashboard provides for you and giving yourself grace. If you're not seeing exactly what you want when you land, you can go and you can look, okay, week over week, month over month, post over post, what it actually looks like for you. The example I was talking about, the posts, I pulled a post from Meg and I from one of our sessions that we posted on our page. So we reached 263 people with this, but there were 438 views. So more people than our reach saw the post for whatever reason and how they engaged. There were 7 interactions. So that you clicking on it, clicking to the RTO9 page. I'm not sure that I don't believe we shared a link to this one. So there would have been no link clicks. And then it gives me a trajectory of like when it did well, when did the post perform its best. And often you'll see like, it might be right when you post it and it goes down as the hours go by or the days go by. Again, all this data can be broken down right down to like very specific details of your posts. And another thing to realize is that all of these analytic metrics have this little information dot. I can't click on it, but if you look at where the overview is and it says views, there's a little eye there. And if you click on it, this box where it says post interactions, every piece of metric that's there, there's an information box and it tells you what you're looking at. So if you're looking, we did this presentation today, we're talking about all these things, and you're like, I'm never going to remember this, it's too much. It's fine. You just go back, and as long as you make the dashboard your friend, that's what you want to do. You want to go in there, you want to take a look around, you want to click on things, and here it's going to tell you exactly, it'll pop up these boxes, it'll tell you what you're looking at, and it makes it easier for you to understand the information that's being shared. Clear as mud, right? I hope that that we're kind of at least making you feel lighter about, what you're seeing and what you're engaging with in your content. Now I want to send you off with some simple actionable steps to analyze your last 10 posts. I'm not even going a month's worth. I just want you to look at 10 of your last posts. Maybe that is a month's worth. That's okay too. But really analyzing, and you can either screenshot this or you can come back to it however you see fit. But here would be my steps if I were you and you're just trying to understand your data and look at it. And here's how I would follow it. So I would gather the key metrics for each post. So go to each post, look at the engagement rate, the like, comments, the shares, the saves, your reach, your impressions, all of that information. Review that for the 10. And if you want it on a sheet and you just want to write it, go for it. If you want an actual Google sheet, you can go document that way. Identify your top performers. Just looking at everything, you're going to be able to see, wow, these posts engage, like were much better than the others. You're going to be able to identify your top performers, and it's important to know what those are. Then we're going to spot patterns. So analyze what's common, what always works. Notice the audience behavior, the trends, the time of day they engage in the post. All of this can be noted and identified in your 10 posts. You're also going to want to look at the low performers. So maybe the things that you're taking a lot of time with are not actually helping you get where you want to go. So you'll be able to scrap that and focus on the content that does. Maybe it's poor timing or unclear messaging. Maybe your product or service requires more education and people are just still not sure, and that's why they're not buying from you. All of this information will help you clarify that. Then you can set goals for improvements. So it's important to have goals. And once you know what's working and what's not working, you can decide, okay, here's what I'm going to work on. So for example, you could work on increasing your engagement by 10% or improving your CTR on your next campaign. So that's your click-through rate. So you want people to click on things. How can you get people to engage more with that content and click on it? It's going to get you thinking about what you should be sharing. And then use those insights from your analysis to guide and adjust. And you're going to continue to repeat and refine this over and over again. Make it a habit to relook at your content and whatever works for you. Someone earlier said that they look at everything every quarter. That works for you, then let that be your jam. If you need to look at it week over week because you have some big goals and you really want to make sure that you're not wasting any time with the content that you're sharing, look at it week over week. How did my posts perform? What worked well? What didn't work well? And sometimes, again, if we're looking at just those engagement metrics and we're looking at just the likes and the comments and all the kind of superficial stuff, the stuff that we can see, we're not seeing the behind the scenes stuff that really says, well, overall, it was much better than the last week or the last month. It's important to do that. And you can't measure what you're not looking at. You can't change what you're not measuring. It's important to take a look at this on whatever schedule works for you, but it is important to look at it. I'm seeing some questions. I'm just going to go back and look through here. Could you identify where you can find the audience behavior analytics, specifically times of the activity? So we did have that one screen, and it is showing where the activity here is. So this particular post, we're able to see this. If you go into your actual, again, if we're looking, there's so many dashboards. So for me to be able to tell you, like, go specifically to this area on your dashboard, it's a little bit difficult, but you want to be inside. If you're in Meta, you're going to want to be inside of your Meta dashboard, and everything is here. You're going to start probably with overview. And once you go into overview, everything here is clickable. Everything dives a little bit deeper, and you will be able to see your audience details. And maybe I should have had that as a specific look through, but my goal today is not for you to get super hung up on specific. Yes, it's important to get hung up on the specific things, but it really was to get a comfort in going in here, understanding what is actually important, those basic analytic tools, metrics, and really looking at those and starting there. I have friends who work in this space specifically. It is a full-time job that requires a crazy deal of analyzing and time and energy. It's not something that can happen in a 40-minute presentation. There's so much that can be dissected. But if you're if you're a person that loves data, there's so much in here. It's just about taking the time to look at whatever dashboard you have, digging into it, and seeing how deep it can go. But you should be able to see some of the very basic metrics of who your audience. That's like almost immediately when you log into your Meta, you should be able to see those details fairly easily. Question about how many times a month do you recommend we view the analytics? Again, I think it's based on where you're at. If I were me, we look at everything monthly. So we manage a few accounts for our clients. We will go in and look at everything month over month so that we can make a plan on the content that we're creating for them next month. And we'll usually start doing that on week 3 because we're going to be dropping content the next month. And that's like a short analysis. Month over month, we do a short analysis of, okay, what's been working? That's been doing well. Okay, we're going to keep going with that. After the quarter is done, then we do like a really full debriefing. We really go into full detail of like, okay, this quarter as a whole, we really led with this. It worked really well. Here's what we need to change. To be honest, metrics and your data is something you should be looking at pretty routinely. But again, I'm just trying to give you grace so that you don't feel like it's super overwhelming because it really is. How do you best analyze the engagement formula? What is a good number versus a result that may need improvement? So it's really difficult to. The data is all relative to your page and your engagement and the people that you have and the growth that you're experiencing, I guess I should say. So you're going to want to start and just analyzing what your number is. So finding out, go to a month where you haven't really looked at it, and then just try to grow it by 2 to 5% month over month. You're going to want to try to get that going and moving so that you can grow it. And if you use that as a basis to try to make that growth, any growth is good growth. And you might have some months where it like really skyrockets, but I rather see slow and steady than something crazy and just these crazy goals that just make it really difficult to feel confident like you're making strides. If you were to start with one metric, what would your priority be? I think the biggest thing that I would look like is the click-through rate and the clicks. So I don't think, again, if you're just creating content on the fly, you're probably not thinking about, okay, I want to make sure I share this link, or I want to make sure I get people to this page. Your website really is the hub of where you want your activity to be, and you really can identify a lot of your consumers' behavior there and understanding if they want your product or your service. So for me, knowing that people are coming to my site and they're actually clicking in to learn more about me, that tells me more than a like. Again, because earlier we talked about it, a person's face could be a reason to like a page or a post or, a team photo. Yes, so great. I love to see it. But that's not necessarily telling me that people are interested in what I have to offer. So I would always go back to the click-through rate details, the clicking on the website, and seeing that engagement go up. Now, that is purely from, I think that comes from when you have an established page, those become a lot more important. If I was just starting, then I would probably focus more on those engagement metrics, because that's where people will learn about our page, learn that we exist. That's where we're going to grow our page. And so I think we can't be afraid of those engagement metrics, even if they are a little bit more service level, I guess. If you have information you want to share about complicated product or service, do you convey that only that only via special or rely on a website that people click through to? Yeah, I think if I'm understanding correctly, is that you're probably selling a product or service that requires a little bit more explaining. Um, it's not as easy as just like, here, buy my book, and it's a very simple thing. Um, Social media should tell a story, so you should try to tell your story as well you can. I think quite often what happens in social content is you try to put all the information in one post, where now the behavior of people who are on social, we will binge a page or we will go through a person's page if we're really interested in something. So if you can do things in more digestible chunks, it's probably easier. But do not underestimate the power of your website and having everything there. That really is where you can tell the story the way you see fit. That's where, if you get somebody to your website and they're perusing through your pages, they are already at a point right now where they have an interest, and they will probably be more likely to engage in heavier content information than they would be on a social post as they're scrolling through waiting at the doctor's office. So it needs to be digestible when we are holding it in our hands and scrolling through. But when we're on somebody's website, we've probably identified that we have a further interest. And yes, I would probably dive a little bit deeper into my own space versus one, really substantial posts. I would be breaking those down into smaller contents. Organic content is being swamped by paid content. Do we need paid content to reach people? I hate that it has become more of a pay to play game than ever. The funny thing is that ad content and paid content is going to a very organic place. So anyone who works in ads or works in just the advertising space as a whole is seeing a huge shift over the last few years, where we do enjoy much more organic content as sponsored or paid content. And I'm sure you're seeing it in your feed. You're scrolling by like regular stuff that you watch a reel, and then there's something that pops up and it feels, I caught myself the other day on a 6-minute ad because it felt like just a regular post. It was organic, it performed well, and now it's an ad. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway from that is, if you have something that's performing really well organically, and even if it's like really well might be a smaller percentage for you because your formula is only based on 500 followers or 1,000 followers. That might be something that you can back up and pay to bump up and push a little bit further. There can be a method to that strategy. But yes, for the most part, you either have to have really engaging content that, is very organic and people really enjoy and it's fun and it's entertaining. Unfortunately, today we're looking to be entertained or educated, or you need to start looking at doing some paid elements, which is like a beast of its own. And we've only scratched the surface of a conversation about analytics when it comes to ads, because you can get so granular with all of that. And to be honest, I think that the average business owner or organization who has a social person, we can't possibly rely on the person that's creating the content. And that's another thing, like, give yourself some grace and some slack, because the companies and the organizations who are doing all these things, the content, the ads, the blogs, the podcasts, like all these things that they do to market themselves, there are people assigned to every bit of this. I work with pay-per-click experts, and they have copywriters, they have digital ad specialists, they have people who manage the ads, they have people who analyze the ads. There's like 10 people doing all the necessary pieces to really understand the data and everything really well. So there is just so much information that's available to us, but we need to be realistic with the season that we're in and what we're doing. What do you have access to yourself? Are you paying anyone to work with you? Are you working with another organization? What should you be looking for? Or is it just you? And if it's just you, that's why this basic conversation exists today. I want you to look at these very basic things and feel like you're gaining some momentum. And if you pay attention to these basic things, you will be able to make some adjustments to see some change. And that should be enough for where you're at. If you get to a place where you want more, you can start bringing in some experts or some people who have just this knowledge that they can kind of push you a little bit more forward, because it's, again, it's the job of 10 people in one. Meg, I'm going to bring you back because I know I just kept going. There you are.
I'm here. And I think one of the big things that people need to take away from this as well is that you can't break anything.
No.
Go and click through things. There's lots of times that, people learn differently. And it's one thing we'll sit here and have a conversation about it. And it's great. People who learn this way, this is a perfect opportunity for you. Corinne had some screenshots in there. But the big thing is going and clicking and seeing your analytics for yourself. And then maybe have the recording happening on one screen. You can have your own analytics open on the other screen so that you can click through and kind of see your own information.
You're so right. There's nothing that you can possibly break. And I think we get overwhelmed when we're in the tool, but I think, again, don't look at this on your little handheld device. Like, sit there with your laptop, maybe an iPad or something, like get a bigger screen where you can see more information and it starts to make more sense. And if, there's a reason why every time, and this is where I think most people get frustrated, is like you're on the regular Facebook app or website, and then you want to just see like insights. And then it's like trying to pull you away to like this meta thing. And you're like, I don't have the meta thing. I don't want the meta thing. Just get the meta thing. Like, just get it. We don't want to have all these tools, but they exist for a reason. And that's because at the start of, using these tools, it was all at a more basic level. And over time, we've wanted more detail, more metric, more data. And so they've created a hub for all of this information. It costs nothing for you to go and get this information. Like, we're all looking for the answers to our marketing, and they're like giving us the answers for free, but we're like, but it's too hard. It's annoying more than anything. I get it. They don't make it necessarily easy. But there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is most of what is there is probably too much and too overwhelming. And if you start with these basic things and you just look at it post over post, I think at the end of the day, the data and the results you're looking for really just stems through creating better content, more intentional content, entertaining content, educational content, things that really help people feel connected to your page. And that on its own starts to change those metrics and those details for you. And none of those very granular things matter until you find a foundation with that. So it's all one step at a time.
I was going to say, and it's new year, new you, new time to, get started on this. If you haven't been doing it previously, that's okay. You can always start now and start at the basic level so that you don't frustrate yourself and give up on it. It's important to start small.
Start small. Everything else is so much more than you need. The basics are there, and they are so easy to consume once you make it a regular occurrence in how you analyze things in your business or your organization. So one step at a time. Thank you. I'm seeing comments. Thank you. I appreciate that you enjoyed this. Yeah, if you have any questions, you know where to find me.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, it's now 11. We'll let everyone go on with their day, but Happy New Year. Thank you for joining us. If you have questions, feel free to send them along. I'm happy to get you connected with Corinne. Friendly reminder that this was recorded. You will get a copy. There's going to be a follow-up email. And again, the little 2-minute survey, if you have time to fill it out, that would be greatly appreciated. And then thank you, Corinne, for another wonderful session. We have another 2 still coming up. So if you haven't registered already, there's 2 more, plus a French version of each of these sessions. So if you're more comfortable with French, we do have that available as well. But thank you again, Corinne, for another engaging session.
Thanks for having me. Enjoy the new year, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Bye.